Being able to change music in fighting games actually has quite a long and varied history. And when I say changing music, I mean the ability for players to listen to an alternative song on a set stage, which can then be toggled on or off. Some of the earliest examples of this were in the home ports of Capcom vs SNK 1, Tekken 1, 2, and 3, and even Smash Bros. Melee by holding down the L button, just to name a few. When available, this was a fantastic feature that really elevated a stage for me. The developers could have just taken the easy route and not included these alternative song options, though part of this decision could be because the developers knew that these stages would be played over and over again for hours. And whether you're playing against a person or a CPU, the soundtrack is bound to get a little bit stale no matter how much you love it. Including the option to hear a different soundtrack undoubtedly was a welcome relief for many players, myself included. Unfortunately though, this wasn't really a common feature, and as time went on, seemingly became more and more rare. Even for games that used to have it, like Tekken, this feature was phased out over time. I think part of this is probably because after Tekken 4, there wasn't a separate arcade and console soundtrack, but instead just one soundtrack regardless of the version. For me personally, it wasn't until the release of Smash Bros. Brawl when I felt like customizing music was back and better than ever. Like I mentioned before, while Melee allowed alternative songs by holding down the L button, Brawl took a different approach to music in its games. For each stage, players could select which song to prioritize when fighting on a stage through a separate menu select. And personally, my favorite part about this feature was that you can select one song or multiple songs and adjust the probability of each one playing. You could have all of the options cranked to the max so that any number of songs could randomly play, or just leave it to your favorites and wipe any songs you didn't like off the face of that stage. That being said, you couldn't mix songs from different franchises, which is understandable. Nintendo and Sega might feel a little bit weird if the Mario Bros. Theme was playing on the Sonic Green Hill stage. Oddly enough though, you couldn't mix songs from the same franchise on different stages either. For example, having the Great Bay song from Wind Waker play on the Bridge of Eldin was a no-go. I'd like to say that they did this so only songs that represented the stage properly would play, but if that was the case, then why can you have Dr. Mario music playing on the Game & Watch stage? This specific example might be a holdover from Melee, but the whole not allowing Zelda songs to play in all Zelda stages just seems weird to me. This remained the case through Smash Bros. Wii U, with even the expanded soundtrack not being allowed within the same series stages. However, after some DLC stages made a return, Nintendo did loosen up on this a little bit, but only with those specific DLC stages. Finally, Smash Bros. Ultimate was when this practice came to an end. At last, you could have any Zelda song go on any Zelda stage. Players still couldn't do anything unhinged though, like have Sephiroth's theme play in Peach's Castle, but we all know this is never gonna happen. Overall, I would say that Smash Bros. Really nails music customization in their games. The selection of music they have is absolutely insane, and it's impossible for any other series to compete in terms of quantity and variety. Even in their earlier days of Brawl, I think that they still handle music customization better than some modern games do now. Since the beginning, Tekken has always had the ability to change music, though this was less so customization and more so having the ability to change the console-exclusive soundtrack to the arcade original one. However, this all changed in Tekken 4, 5, and 6, probably because the developers didn't see a point in allowing music customization when they could just use one soundtrack for both the home and arcade versions of the game. That being said, when Tekken Tag Tournament 2 was released on the PS3 and Xbox 360, not only did it include so many different features, it also included the best feature in my opinion, Tekken Tunes mode. And Tekken Tunes really had so much freedom, and it really felt like you could do anything with it. For example, you could use old Tekken songs from any game if you had an MP3 file in the PS3 or Xbox 360. You could put in Street Fighter music, licensed music, or just yourself talking if you were a weirdo. I don't know. My favorite part was that you could assign any of these MP3 files to any stage or menu, like the main menu or the character select screen. And on a personal note, I thought that the music in Tekken Tag 2 was pretty good, but ultimately forgettable, Not because the songs were bad, but because I had so much freedom to change the music that I didn't use the original soundtrack much. For example, I associate the character select screen with the Pacific Rim theme song, the Tulip stage with the song Say Hello, and the Factory stage with Du Hast. Honestly, this might be a case where the players had a little bit too much freedom, to the point that in hindsight, probably the designers wouldn't want. I don't know how many people use this feature, but I assume that the composers didn't want to have their whole soundtrack replaced by everyone's Linkin Park playlist. One thing that is also interesting about this feature in Tag 2 is that later on, the developers released paid DLC that had a large majority of the entire Tekken soundtrack, but you could easily just get these MP3s for free. So it seemed a bit odd to charge for the convenience of all these files, but maybe they were just banking on you not going through the effort to get those MP3s. In Tekken 7 though, the music customization was reined in a little bit. Despite Harada stating that he tried to get the same level of freedom for Tekken tunes like in Tag 2, he said on Twitter that he couldn't. Apparently, Sony told him that there was a security issue and they would have to update the OS of the PS4 to do this. And because of that, the song selection was limited to music from the Tekken series for 7. Not only that, Harada also added that this was due to the fact that players couldn't store MP3s on the PS4 or Xbox One locally without having a USB plugged in the whole time, and that there was no way to do that on this gen of consoles. Or was it? In addition, just like in Tag 2, Tekken 7 has some missing songs that are coincidentally tracks with vocals in them, such as the console version of Yoshimitsu's Tekken 2 theme, Ground Zero Funk from Tekken 5, and the infamous Snoop Dogg song from Tag 2. Another detail about this mode is that you can also add 2 songs per stage, meaning that for rounds 1 and 2 you have one song, and then in the third round you can play a different one. The only exception to this is the geometric plane for some reason, where you can only choose one song. On a personal note, something I do for each stage in 7 is I choose a specific Tekken 5 song for rounds 1 and 2, and then select its Dark Resurrection remix for the final round of that stage. For whatever reason though, unfortunately the ability to change music like this in Tekken 7 is a PS4 exclusive feature. This is pretty shitty to say the least, because if you're playing on Xbox or PC, you're stuck with the default soundtrack. PC is slightly better than Xbox, I suppose, because you can mod the music, but it's a big pain compared to the way it's done on the PS4. It's absolutely beyond me why they chose to make a different mode exclusive to console as opposed to like costumes or something. If they wanted to make the versions different for some reason, the developers could have easily slapped a PlayStation branded shirt onto some character like they did for the Tap Out brand in Tekken 6. Or maybe even have some characters cosplay as PlayStation characters like in the Wii U version. Now, I can already hear some people in the comments saying, but wait, the Wii U version of Tag 2 had an exclusive mode as well, which was Tekken Ball mode. Which, yeah, sure, but that version of Tag 2 came out quite a bit later after the other versions, so Namco had to make coming late to the Tag 2 party seem like a good deal to Nintendo owners, while also enticing people who bought the game already to double dip. Let's also not forget that in the Wii U version of Tag 2, you could edit music but only with other Tag 2 songs since they never added the music DLC to this game. Also, the Wii U couldn't store MP3s locally, so you were just out of luck. This was also a problem that the Xbox One owners of Tag 2 would soon discover themselves, but at least they had the music DLC, which suddenly was not such a dumb purchase anymore. Anyways, my sidetracking aside, let's go back to Tekken 7. I don't have a problem with Tekken 7 only being able to play Tekken music, since I love the music from the series. I also get that the developers probably want you to listen to Tekken music only and not your playlist of anime intros. But what if I told you that Tekken 7 very well could have played those anime intros and other licensed songs if they really wanted to, because the whole PS4 and Xbox One not being able to store MP3s is not true. And we don't have to look far to prove that the statement from Harada was completely false. Let's look at another Namco game, Mobile Suit Gundam Extreme vs. Maxi Boost On for the PS4. In this game's default settings, players can mix the game's soundtrack to their heart's content and even put in some anime intros if you have the Japanese premium sound version. Though, I don't know why you would do that anyways, since you can use your own MP3s in the base game and not just through having a USB plugged in. Instead, MP3 files are stored locally in the save data of the game itself. In other words, when you add music, it's added onto the save file of your game, which I think is a very clever backdoor way to play your own music. This save file method also works if you're playing this game on your PS5, so if you hear Harada make the same excuse that Tekken 8 can't do this because of the USB, point to Gundam Extreme Versus and ask why that Namco game could do it, but Tekken 8 can't. All of that aside, one major drawback of the way Gundam Extreme customizes music is that the music is per character. That's a great option to include, but if you're only going to play as one character or fight the same ones over and over again, then this mode is potentially not as useful. Previous Gundam vs. games gave the option for the stage music to be changed and not just per character, so I don't understand why Namco can't do both here. Briefly touching on another Namco series, Soul Calibur, starting with Soul Calibur 4, allowed for customizing music but with a very limited roster of songs. This list included only Soul Blade and the original Soul Calibur songs, which had to be obtained via DLC. Maybe Namco planned to put in more songs other than these ones, but dropped it due to the poor sales of the DLC, or maybe they just forgot. Thankfully, Soul Calibur 5 and 6 made improvements to the music selection by having all the songs selectable via updates and DLC that actually came out. This was a great addition, but I just wish that the UI to do this was a little bit better in Soul Calibur 6. The game just expects the player to know the name of a stage without showing a picture or something, which is kind of annoying. But honestly, if that's the only complaint I have, then that's a good thing. Moving on to our next series. King of Fighters didn't really start allowing for music to be fully customized until KOF 15. Despite that, overall, I would say that 15 has a fantastic music customization mode. In it, you have most of the music from not only the mainline KOF games, but also spin-offs, handheld titles, and even other SNK games like Samurai Showdown, Metal Slug, and Fatal Fury. Custom music is assigned per stage and is available in multiplayer and not single-player arcade mode. Additional music tracks can be unlocked by beating the arcade mode in various ways, which is a great way to get people to play that mode and listen to your original soundtrack at the same time. My one criticism though of this music mode is that I think the UI is a little confusing, but maybe that's just me. Another game we see music customization mode in is in Dead or Alive 5. And this mode is interesting in particular because the game allows you to switch between using a character theme or stage theme per match, but you can't customize these stage themes, only the character ones. You got that? This unfortunately causes the same issue as in Gundam Extreme Versus, where the variety of music is weirdly limited by the implementation. And honestly, this is a shame since DOA 5 has music from the whole series up to this point. This drawback aside, one positive is that you can change the menu songs to whatever you like, and that's cool. DOA 6 corrects this issue by allowing you to customize anything from character themes to stage themes. That being said, the variety of stages are cut down significantly from DOA 5, making it less appealing to customize the music in this game. In DOA 6, it's also way more difficult to unlock music since players have to level up characters and complete missions in one of the game's modes, after which players unlock the ability to buy songs with in-game currency. Though, honestly, none of this was something I could be bothered to do anyways since 6 was so disappointing to me, and this was just one issue in a huge laundry list of problems I had with this game. So, in all the series that I've talked about so far, there has been a mix of both good and bad music customization features. However, now we're going to discuss a series that fails to have any significant music customization feature in most of its games: Street Fighter. Now, I hate to end things on a negative note, so after discussing a bit of history, we'll circle back around and discuss things that the series can do to improve in this aspect. To its credit, in Street Fighter and other Capcom fighters, players are able to change music in light ways, such as setting the song to different versions of the same themes. For example, in Street Fighter 4, you could have the stage theme play or a character's theme. Street Fighter 5 had this feature as well, and an added plus was that you could also customize a character's theme. However, all of this came with some caveats. When changing a character's theme, players could only choose a different version of an existing song or another Capcom song from a series such as Devil May Cry 4, Monster Hunter, Mega Man, etc. I suppose it makes sense that you can't have Ryu coming out to Chun-Li's theme for the sake of branding or whatever, except when they undid that with the last wave of DLC, making that choice even more baffling to me. But that, to me, just highlights why it's important to have an option to customize the stage song as well, which you unfortunately can't do in this game. Capcom came so close with this feature in 5, so much so that I was confident they would have this feature perfected in 6. Needless to say, they didn't. Street Fighter 6 somehow manages to have the worst jukebox mode out of any of the games that we've talked about today. For example, Street Fighter 6 only allows you to use custom music for walking around in World Tour mode, and I really mean just walking around, because once you fight someone, it plays whatever the default music is. You can also use custom music when walking around the online lobbies, but again, once an actual match starts, it's gone. Also, I think it's annoying that you have to make a playlist in order for the custom music to play, but that's a minor gripe. A bigger one is that the only other mode you can use this feature in is training mode, and even here it's also a bit annoying since the game will save your training settings but not the music player settings. Also, the music player can only be used in training and not in the mission mode, which is really unfortunate since people can spend a lot of time in here, potentially just as much time as in regular training mode, since it takes a while for people to nail those combos, and hearing the same character theme over and over while you're doing that is not fun. All of these things being said, my biggest gripe of all with music customization in 6 is that the song unlock process is ridiculous. First off, the only songs you can unlock in the game are some Bison themes at the end of World Tour mode. The other songs are being drip-fed through the paid portion of the Battle Pass. I think this is a huge shame because Street Fighter has some of the best fighting game music of the genre, and there's really no way to celebrate that in this game. I understand there might be difficulties being able to use some songs, for example, Ed and Abigail's theme from Street Fighter 5, or maybe some select Street Fighter 3 songs that have vocals, but if that's the case, just do the Tekken method and cut them out if you have to. I'm sure I will find alternative songs to replace those ones if they were to be cut. I really hope that in a future update, Capcom changes this whole system. They absolutely need to give the option to use music from other games in local versus matches. But even if they did that, I just know that they're not gonna change the whole drip feeding method through Battle Pass. Personally, with the Battle Pass, I'm conflicted because I love collecting these songs and want to build up my collection in case Capcom ever decides to fix the music player. If they don't though, I kinda wasted my money for nothing since these songs are pretty useless to me as they are now. Currently, the only modes where custom music is playable is when I would have the music on mute anyways while I listen to something like a podcast. I really wish that customizable music became more of a standard feature in fighting games. To some extent, different series have made varying levels of progress on this front, but each game comes with its own quirks and issues. Customizable music is key to me since I think it's important to offer a variety of music to players, not to replace the existing soundtrack, but to add to it. Moreover, music is so subjective, and players deserve the ability to explore a game's history through its music, especially because it's not like most of these series will offer ways for you to play their older titles legally anyways. If you've stuck around this long, thanks so much for watching. If you're curious as to my ranking for how each of these games handles customizing music, here it is visually. Subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.